Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander Score Studio. Welcome to the show. So, really quick, if you haven't seen my most recent episode on Fateful Cooperation, make sure you check that episode out at some point because that is a really spicy card. But don't leave for that episode just yet, even though it's incredibly spicy, because you might miss this episode like I missed this card when it got spoiled, apparently. I mean, I am pretty in tune, or at least I'd like to think I'm pretty in tune with spoiler season. But with the vast amount of spoilers that have come out, I have apparently missed this one, and it's a very exciting one. So blame Eddie for me missing it. And with all that said, let's jump into it. So Tawnos, the Toymaker, is a brand new Simic commander, and don't roll your eyes just yet and be like, oh, Simic, lands, drawing cards, yeah. This one isn't about either of those things really at all. Now, I mean, obviously you're in a Simic deck, so you can still draw, and also, get lands into play. But yeah, this commander is, well, let's just go through it real quick. I'm talking far too much on the side about this without actually reading the card. My apologies. A 3/5 Human Artificer for 3 green/blue. Whenever you cast a beast or bird creature spell, you may copy it, except the copy is an artifact in addition to its other types. So this is a very interesting commander, kind of reminiscent to Volo, but kind of in the opposite way. Whereas Volo is like, hey, if you kind of go wide on creature types and, just have like, a couple of each creature type or just even one of each kind of creature type in your deck, you can basically double up all those creatures. Whereas this one's like, no. I specifically care about, for whatever reason, beasts and birds. That is all I care about. Whenever you cast those creature spells, you can copy it. And also, just as a added little twist and a little flavor to it as well, that copy is also an artifact, which of course does have some implications. But yeah, I mean, the main benefit though is every single one of your creatures, if you, are building a complete, beast, bird, creature tribal deck, essentially, you could, go one or the other or both, is going to be doubled up with Tawnos, which is a ton of value, and you can really take advantage of this. And of course, you can also take advantage of the fact, that these creatures are tokens too. We'll talk about some ways to do that here in a bit. So yeah, again, not just your, bland Simic commander that's like, hey, lands, hey, card draw. This one actually, again, provides value in a different way. Now, yes, can you, get lands and card draw from some of those beasts and birds? Probably. We'll talk about some that can help here in a bit with those kinds of things. But before we do that, keep in mind that, well, when new exciting spoilers like this one come out, I mean, even though I missed it, and I have no idea which day this one came out, and my apologies. Maybe it came out over the weekend while I was, well, having a life and doing other things. Because, yeah, I don't just work on this channel 24 hours a day, unlike what some people think. But yeah, anyways, if you are interested in this commander, make sure you check out that card list link in the description below, because when new exciting commanders like this one are spoiled, sometimes cards that work well with them tend to go up in price sooner rather than later. Now, with all that said, let's jump into those cards. First up, yeah, I mean, some birds that you might want to consider are cards like, Augury Owl, Ledger Shredder, which is really fun to say, and Curiosity Crafter, which is also fun to say. Augury Owl is a 1/1 flying bird, so just a tiny little bird for 2 mana. And yeah, once it enters the battlefield, though, you get to scry 3. So while that isn't, card advantage, that is a lot of card selection, a ton of card selection. And of course, with this commander, when you play this, you are doubling that up. So this is basically, hey, pay 2 mana, get 2 1/1 flyers, and scry 6. Or, we'll scry 3 twice. You know what I mean? But yeah, scry a ton. Essentially, set yourself up for your next card draw in a very, very powerful way. And speaking of card draw, well, how about Ledger Shredder, a 1/3 bird advisor, again, for just 2 mana. Flying, whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, Ledger Shredder connives, which of course means draw a card, discard a card. If you discard a non-land card, put a counter on this creature. So this counts any player, not just you, but your opponents as well. Making 2 of these can provide you an absurd amount of looting throughout the game. Again, yeah, a player casting a second spell happens quite often in Commander. I mean, that can happen on your turn, can happen on your opponent's turns. You can even do it on your opponent's turns too, in some instances as well, if you really want to trigger that. But yeah, Conniving, a great way to dig down into your deck to replace dead cards in your hand, and also, if you are discarding non-land cards, to grow your ledger shredders. Now I'm messing up the name. Oh goodness. Curiosity Crafter, a 3/3 bird wizard with flying that costs 3 and a blue. It says you have no maximum hand size, so that's lovely again with, some card draw, and this provides you an absurd amount of card draw in this deck. Whenever a creature token you control deals common damage to a player, draw a card. So obviously, getting a second copy of this is pretty absurd. Now, every single one of your creature tokens, which again, you're going to be making a lot of them, your commander just makes a copy again of all your creatures essentially. Every single time one of those creature tokens hit, as long as you've got both the Curiosity Crafters in play, the original and the token, you are drawing 2 cards per creature. So, of course, that can get pretty out of hand. And yeah, again, like I mentioned, this commander does not provide you card draw. It does not provide you, land ramp. But of course, it can help out in various ways, like, with this. Also, if you really want to lean heavily into, birds, sure. You can also include a card like Warden of Evos Isle, 2/2 bird wizard with flying that says creature spells with flying you cast cost 1 less to cast. So, yeah, having 2 of these in play, that reduces the cost even further. Your birds, are going to be very cheap to cast. Some of those, obviously, we already talked about, are just going to cost 1 mana. But yeah, depending on the deck, if you are leaning more heavily into birds, then you can definitely utilize a card like this to great effect. That being said, when looking at the birds in Simic versus the beasts in Simic, and this might be, just my opinion, but it looks like the beasts pack a bit more of a punch and might be the ones that you want to lean more heavily into. Now, that being said, doesn't mean you can't build, bird tribe around this. Just saying, beast might be where it's at. Because when it comes to beasts, we have some fantastic ones. Let's start off with Manglehorn, Displacer Kitten, and Garruk's Pack Leader. Manglehorn has, when enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact, and artifacts your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped. So getting a second copy of this, for 3 mana, we are getting 2 2/2s, and we get to take out 2 artifacts. And also, we can slow down our opponent's artifacts by having them come into play tapped. Now, having 2 of these in play doesn't really, make that any better, except for the fact, if one of these gets dealt with, then yeah, we still get to do that. Or next up, how about Displacer Kitten? And oh goodness, can this be gross with this kind of a deck? When you build it in the right way. Avoidance, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, exile to 1 target non-land permanent you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So getting a second copy of this means you get a second trigger of it, and oh my goodness, can you just do some absurd things with some ETBs that you're going to be having in this deck, and we'll get to some of those here in a bit. But yeah, casting 1 non-creature spell is basically going to blink any of your creatures, or 2 of your creatures essentially, so have fun with that. And speaking of fun, yeah, when it comes to card draw, the birds aren't the only ones that can help you, because a beast can definitely help you with Garruk's Pack Leader. It says, whenever another creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. And yeah, we've got plenty of those kinds of creatures, and actually we've got ways to make our creatures even larger, so that even our smaller creatures can trigger this as well. Regardless, getting a second copy of this means that any time another creature with power 3 or greater comes into play, we are drawing 2 cards. And like I mentioned, when you pair this with Displacer Kitten or another way to, blink a creature or bounce creature and recast it, get it back into play, we're going to be drawing an absurd amount of cards. Especially keep in mind that, sometimes these kind of triggers say, non-token creature. Garruk's Pack Leader does not specify that, so we're counting all the tokens as well. So have fun with that absurd amount of card advantage. Speaking of which, Cultivator Colossus might be a plant, but it is also a beast. A Star with trample. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. And on top of that, and most importantly, when it enters the battlefield, you may put a land card from your hand on the battlefield tapped. If you do, draw a card and repeat this process. So essentially, yeah, just keep drawing cards, getting lands into play, and then repeat that process again with a second one. So if you draw even more lands, you can just keep repeating that again and again and again. Having 2 monstrosity. Okay, monstrosity is an actual mechanic. Monstrous. Monster is also part of the mechanic. Giant. There we go. That's not currently a mechanic or a keyword or whatnot. Having 2 giant Cultivator Colossus can be a massive threat, and yeah, can really do some damage to your opponents, especially in combination with some things coming up. But yeah, also dump your lands into play, get you way ahead on lands, draw you some cards. What's not to like? Speaking of what's not to like, well, Protean Hulk, an incredibly powerful card. Now you can get 2 of them. A 6/6 beast, and when it dies, search life for any number of creature cards with total mana cost 6 or less, put them on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Basically, I mean, again, when we have both this die and the token version of it dying, we're getting a total of, 12 potential, converted mana cost directly into play. We can get a lot of powerful things again, even though we're not going to be getting the token copies of them again, because again, keep in mind that our commander says, when you cast something, not when it enters. That would be much more broken, and probably a lot of ways to break that, but still, cheating creatures into play with this can really help. And speaking of getting more and more creatures into play, Rampaging Balos, a great beast on its own, but an even better beast when we get a second copy of it, a 6/6 trampling beast that has landfall. Whenever land enters battlefield under control, you may create a 4/4 green beast creature token. So getting 2 of these can get really absurd, and you can get a giant army in absolutely no time. I mean, first up, they're just, 2 6/6s, which is great with trample. And then let's just say you play 1 land. That's 8 more power across 2 more bodies. And let's say that land was, like an Evolving Wilds, and you crack it and you get, another land into play. That would be another 8 power across 2 more bodies. So that's what? Just for that interaction, casting a Rampaging Balos, playing Evolving Wilds, and cracking it, that is, 12 plus, I believe, 16. That's 28 power across 6 bodies for just casting a single spell and playing a single land that, well, it goes and gets you another land, but still. And of course, yeah, like I've mentioned before, in Simic, there are plenty of ways to ramp and get a ton of lands into play. So have fun getting an absurd amount of beasts with this. And you can make those creatures and all your other creatures even deadlier with Blossoming Bog Beast. It has, when it attacks, you gain 2 life. Then creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X the amount of life you gained this turn. Getting a second copy of this makes this way better. I mean, this is already still a good card in the right deck, but getting a second copy of this, let's say, again, you swing with both of them, okay? You get both of their triggers on the stack. You gain 2 life, all your creatures get +2/+2 until end of turn and trample. The second trigger happens as well. You gain 2 life, then your creatures get additional +4/+4 until end of turn as well, because again, you gain 2 life, then you're up to 4 life on the turn. So in total, your creatures get +6/+6 and trample until end of turn. Yeah, that is an absurd pump effect that can really get out of control. Next up, though, another great pump effect that just stays permanently, well, as long as this is in play and your commander's in play, is Thunderfoot Baloth. A 5/5 with trample that says as long as you control your commander, it gets +2/+2, and other creatures you control get +2/+2 and have trample. So again, getting a second copy of this means that all your creatures are getting +4/+4 and trample just sitting on the field. Ouch. And speaking of ouch, I mean, as if Craterhoof Behemoth wasn't already a fantastic finisher, this commander makes it even better. A 5/5 with haste. When enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn. Rex the number of creatures you control. You are easily going to be able to make a ton of creatures in this deck, again, because you're making a bunch of copies of the creatures that you're casting, so you can fill the board very quickly. Then you get 2 of these when it comes into play, or when you cast it, I should say. And yeah, this is going to pump all your creatures an absurd amount, including this one and the copy of it. So that's probably going to be game. Next up, though, really quick, outside of, birds and beasts, make sure that you also consider changelings, which are both birds and beasts, because yes, that would also trigger on the cast. Mask Vandal has, when it enters the battlefield, you may exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, exile target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. So this low to the ground shapeshifter, again, with Changeling, which again is a bird and a beast, essentially everything, is able to take out artifacts and enchantments very easily. You just need to get rid of a creature in your graveyard. And yeah, again, when you get a second copy of this, you're getting that trigger twice. That can be a lot of value for you. Speaking of value, again, another one to consider would be Morai of the Frost, which is legendary, but hear me out. It has, you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of a permanent you control, except it's legendary and snow additions to other types, and if it's a creature, it enters with 2 additional counters on it and has Changeling. So yes, a legendary clone, and one that again can really take advantage of our fantastic ETBs and can make the most out of some of our most powerful creatures out there. And speaking of making the most of our creatures, well, we can also utilize them multiple times and get that, cast trigger multiple times with them with something like a Crystal Shard. It has pay 3 and tap or pay a blue and tap. Return target creature to its owner's hand unless its controller pays 1. Now, obviously, we can utilize this set against an opponent, either to, force them to have to pay 1, or if they're out of mana, bounce a creature back to their hand. But obviously, we can also just target one of our own creatures as well, bring it back into our hand so we can recast it for that value. Again, getting an extra copy of it, and again, getting any ETBs or whatnot again, too. And speaking of getting ETBs or whatnot, again, Panharmonicon. Yeah, a fantastic card for this kind of a commander when you're taking advantage of ETBs. If an artifact or a creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Doubling up on ETBs with a commander that likes to double up on your creatures that have ETBs can just get pretty absurd. I mean, again, basically, if you've got a creature that's got an ETB, and it's a bird or a beast or a changeling or whatnot, your commander copies it, and then they both come into play, and Panharmonicon copies both their ETBs, essentially, so you're getting that ETB 4 times for just casting a single creature. Gross. Speaking of gross, well, I have to mention these cards or I'm going to get yelled at in the comments below. Doubling Season. Yes, Doubling Season is a good card in a deck that likes to have tokens and wants to double them. So yeah, Doubling Season's great for that. Parallel Lives, basically the exact same thing for that. Adrix and Twidcasters, a much more budget-friendly way to double up your tokens. And so, yeah, again, I guess I should read one of these. If one of our tokens be created in your control twice, then maybe those tokens are created instead, is Adrix and Nev. So yeah, although this is not a bird beast, it is a merfolk wizard that you definitely want to consider for a deck like this because, again, when you're just casting a single creature spell then, if that's a bird beast or a changeling, you are getting 2 extra copies of it. And yeah, this already absurd commander that can give you a ton of value is giving you even more value from there. So along those lines, you're also going to want to take into account populate cards like Druid's Deliverance, Full Flowering, and Selesnya Uologist. Druid's Deliverance is an instant that says prevent all combat damage to be dealt to you this turn. Populate. So a nice little fog effect for us, but also, and perhaps more importantly, yeah, I mean, again, when our commander is able to make creature token copies of our creatures, this is just basically, hey, 2 mana, copy whatever creature token you want. On top of being able to just prevent damage to you too, like a fog effect. Nice. Or how about Full Flowering? Yeah, we can use our massive quantities of mana to utilize this card to the fullest. Populate X times. So whatever creature tokens we want to copy, we are going to be copying or just copying the same one a ton. Or, of course, we've got a repeatable effect with Selesnya Uologist. Pay 2 and a green, exile target creature card from a graveyard, then populate. So this can be some great graveyard hate against our opponent's creatures, in their graveyards. And on top of that, yeah, basically just, hey, 3 mana, get a copy of whatever creature that you have a creature token of that you want. Yeah, with a commander like this, things can get pretty out of hand when you're set up properly. And things can get especially out of hand when you utilize a card like Second Harvest, an instant that can come out of absolutely nowhere. For each token you control, create a token that's a copy of that permanent. Basically, hey, you've got, a copy token army. Let's just copy all of those, okay? Let's just make, our army, triply as big. That's definitely not a word. Triple the size. There we go, of what it normally would be, again, just by casting creatures. We're casting creatures, we're getting copies. Then we're saying, you know what, I'd like extra copies at instant speed for just 4 mana. Good luck to your opponents, especially, again, when you're getting all of that lovely ETB value right away from something fantastic like this. But now as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to give you my final thoughts on Tawnos the Toymaker. Yeah, I'm not sure when exactly this one was spoiled, so my apologies. My apologies for missing this one. I don't know how it slipped past me, but yeah, I think that this commander has a lot of potential, especially for players out there that have been waiting for a beast or bird, tribal commander, essentially. Yeah, this one can definitely be a very powerful one, especially in my opinion, again, if you lean heavily into the beast side of things, though obviously you're not, you're not at any kind of a disadvantage for leaning heavily one way or the other. And of course, don't forget changelings as well. But yeah, this kind of a commander can provide you a ton of value. Again, I like these new kind of Simic commanders that aren't just about, ramping and drawing cards. Of course, there are ways to do that within what the commander does, by creating creature tokens that either ramp, or draw you cards, etc., etc., etc. But yeah, I think this commander has a lot of potential. I think many players out there are going to be pretty excited about it. And if you are one of those players, make sure you check out that card list link in the description below. And of course, also, make sure you stay tuned to this channel for more exciting quick takes and spoilers coming up. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support.